Reordering things is expensive, and that's one of the things that having an interior designer saves you money, because you can ensure that your measurements are done right. Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Shareen. This is Green Shareen Design. I'm an interior designer here in New York City, and today we are discussing measuring your space. How do you measure a space? Especially when you've got nooks and crannies and walls and all these other things in the way, or different funky angles. You'll notice when you want to work with someone who's doing window treatments or anything of the sort, they always offer to come out and do the measurements for you. Measuring your space is perceived as difficult. It's definitely time consuming, and it's something that you want to make sure you get right. If your measurements are wrong, everything else is going to be wrong. Reordering things is expensive, and that's one of the things that having an interior designer saves you money, because you can ensure that your measurements are done right. But since you haven't had any experience in this yet, I'm happy to show you how to do so. In this new world that we're living in, we have to virtually design, and as a result, sometimes that means that my clients have to do measurements for themselves. I'm going to walk you through a little bit of that in my entryway today and discuss a little about square footage, and we'll talk about the important things needed in order to measure it properly. Kicking off with measurements, one of the first things that you want to do is you want to make sure that you have the right tools. You are going to need a measuring tape. You're going to need a ladder if you have one. You are going to need a pencil. You're going to need an eraser, and you're going to need a sheet of paper. And that is how we will start. The first thing that you want to do is get your overall dimensions. Overall dimensions means despite how funky the place might be shaped, because it may not be a perfect square or it may not be a perfect rectangle, what is the total length and what is the total width of that space? Then we'll break down more of the nuances. The second thing we're going to do is put any of the cutouts. So some of the cutouts that you'll see is doors, you'll see windows, you'll see other nooks, or you'll see hallways and access to other living areas or other spaces, and you'll want to put that in. So you start off by drawing your rectangle or your square of your space, and then you'll outline where your doors are and where your windows are. Don't worry about exactly where it is on the paper right now, because when it comes to drawing to scale, which means drawing it to the appropriate size, that's something that your designer will do on the back end, or they'll do it through CAD, which is a computer animated drawing program. What you're going to focus on next is the distance between the corner to the door. And the way we're going to start measuring is we're going to start due north. And the reason I always start north is because that way I can work my way clockwise around the space and make sure that I know where the light is coming into the room. Lighting is incredibly important, and to make sure that we're getting the right light into the space, or we're using the right window treatments, we need to know where the light is coming from. Also, when I'm designing commercial spaces, I'm always looking for some Instagrammable moment where people can take photos. And because you don't always want your space to look like a studio, we need to make sure that we have access to natural light in some capacity. So we'll start north, and on our wall, we have our measurements for where our windows are, and we're going to measure from the corner to the first trim. When I say the first trim, I'm talking about the crown molding. So the corner to the trim, and then we'll put inches and feet. So it might be 1 feet 5 inches, 5 feet 6 inches, whatever that is from the corner to that trim. If you have a laser, you can put the laser against the wall and just shine that little red light. Just make sure that the dot is hitting the trim, and that'll give you the exact measurement between there. The next thing you'll do is you'll measure the width of the trim itself, or the crown molding itself. And then the next step is to measure the actual window or the doorway if you're in a doorway. You want to get the actual size. It's probably 2 feet 6 or 3 feet 3. Those are the standard door sizes for residential. Then you'll get your trim again on the other side, and then you'll measure and continue along. There's a whole lot of information that I can tell you about measuring windows. I recently had all the screens replaced in my space and did all the measurements, but we can talk about that in further detail later. I'm just going to give you the basics so that you have the specifics. Thankfully, most window treatment companies, like I said, will come out and measure for you to make sure that you get your window treatments right. And if you want me to do an entire video on measuring for window treatments, let me know in the comments below, and I'll be happy to do that. So after we get our trim and we get the sizes of our windows, then the next thing we're going to do is the space in between the windows, or the space in between the doors, and that's just trim to trim. Then we're going to go, of course, from the window to the next wall, or from the door to the next wall on that side. At that point, you have overall dimensions of your space, and you're going to pay attention now to where your outlets are. So you may have power outlets that are on the floor, and you might have 2 outlets, or you might have 4 outlets, and you'd want to pay attention to that. You're going to use a little circle with 2 lines as an indication of a power outlet, and you'll put that wherever those outlets are around the room, and you'll finish your entire square or rectangle of your space. If you have other rooms that you're measuring, you're going to want to draw those rooms within there, and then usually what I say is on the back of the sheet of paper, then you can make it bigger, make that specific room larger, and then go through north all the way around clockwise. And the other thing you want to do is take a photo of each wall. So the full wall, trying to get as much capacity as possible. If you're utilizing an iPhone, or I know on Androids as well, there are zoom in and zoom out features because most of those new phones have multiple cameras. You can actually tap a button in order to go out like 0.5 times magnification. And if you use that button and do that, you'll be able to get a higher range or a wider range of the space in order to get a full shot of the wall. This is really helpful because if you've forgotten anything like a light switch or the air condition, the designer that's looking at it can make sure that they get the proper measurements and dimensions for those things. The next thing we want to do is put in those HVACs. So you want to figure out where your HVAC is, where your air condition is, if there are floor vents in the space, if there are wall vents in the space, if there are ceiling vents. You want to put that on your overall dimensions as well. Window air condition units and things like that that stick out, and then you'd want to measure. Now this is a top-down view that we're doing right now, so you're only going to get the depth of thing and the width of things. You're not really going to do height at this point. Elevations. Elevations are you standing and looking at the wall. So I just mentioned taking photos. This is when you're looking at the wall. How high is the window from the bottom of the floor? How thick are your baseboards or your crown moldings? How high is the ceiling above the window, so that we can figure out exactly where to place your window treatments? And how high are the ceilings? This is another important element. You might find that your ceiling height in one part of your drawing is totally different from your ceiling height in another part of your drawing, so that we can do something fun and interesting in your ceiling if you have those fun ceilings for us to highlight. One of the biggest design mistakes that we see is that things are off scale wise, and so this measuring helps us ensure that we have the right scale on our space. We have the right scale for our furniture, and we can make sure that our furniture lives up to that when we actually purchase those pieces and put them in place. And so as far as the order of design, you want to determine how much you want to spend on your design, and then you want to start your measurements. And then after that, you're going to figure out your colors, and you're going to figure out your floor plan for where things fit. And then you start looking for items. And when you're looking for items, you're going to source things that meet the mood board and the color scheme that you discussed, and also fit appropriately in the scale. So bringing this back to the entryway, let's talk through how I worked out this 39-foot hallway here in this railroad style space. In this hallway, you'll find that we had a really long runway, and one of the things that I wanted to pay attention to was the sight lines. And that means from any angle, when I'm looking at my space, what exactly does it look like when you walk in? What exactly does it look like when you're sitting in the living room and you're facing that way? And then we'll talk about functionality. I'd mentioned in my declutter video, if you didn't see the declutter video, you can check it out over here. I mentioned in the declutter video that I like to keep something up near my entryway where I can put things that we're getting rid of or things that we're donating or giving away. Make sure that it's top of mind, making it easier for me to grab those items when I'm heading out and take care of whatever I need to take care of, like donating it, giving it to whomever I want to give it to. The other thing that's important to have a functional space up there is some sort of countertop space. There needs to be a drop zone when you walk in so that you have an area to put the things that you need to put down. We have this beautiful console table that was an unfinished wood. I went ahead and had it lacquered and covered. And the reason I did that is because every time you touch the countertop table, you're actually transferring bacteria, and that's going to seep into the wood and end up becoming a little bit of a darker color, and I knew I wasn't going to be happy when the color started to change. So you could just throw a top coat on it and finish it. This console is also mounted and secured to the wall. There's a couple of reasons for that. The things that we have on there, they have a lot of girth, they're very heavy, and those are items that we've collected from different travels or sculptures or objects that we've purchased in different places. And I wanted to make sure that if my daughter came in and ran and hit it, or if we got a delivery coming in and we were turning in that tight corner, that we wouldn't knock it over. The next thing on the entryway is our key zone. So whenever you're trying to minimize or you're trying to be intentional about your living, you want to be mindful about where things are so that you can always find them. So we have a designated space for our keys. It makes it really easy for you to always find your keys, and you don't have to be rushing when you're leaving or hunting those things down. We have a dedicated jar for our keys at the door. Right beside that, we have clean masks. So this little container, you would have seen it in the Clean With Me video. If you haven't checked out that video, you can check it out over here. In that Clean With Me video, you saw that after taking the masks out of the washing machine and folding things up, I placed it in this jar. This jar is where we keep all of our clean masks that we grab. This is my husband. The clean masks stay in that jar right over there, makes it really easy for us to grab. Also makes it an easy reminder for you to understand when it's time for you to wash or replace your masks if you're running low and you need to replenish. Next to that is our hand sanitizer. So obviously when people come into the house, we have them go wash their hands. It's few and far between that they're coming in and out of the house anyway because of quarantine during these days. But I do have that jar of hand sanitizer just if I'm standing in the doorway talking to a neighbor or something like that. I'm not breaking away to wash my hands in that moment. I have that sanitizer that I can clean. If a delivery person is coming by and dropping something off, they can also use a sanitizer for a moment. It's just nice to have that up there. And of course that is decantered in a pretty jar. If you have any questions about measuring your space, check out the link in the down below and let me know. I'll be happy to help. Thank you so much for being with me today. You could be anywhere on YouTube, but you chose to be with me, and I appreciate that. I'm so thankful for you, and we'll chat soon. Bye-bye.